I know he's got other problems, but interest rates are the biggest one. Joining us now is Larry Lindsey, old friend, former Federal Reserve governor, former National Economic Council director, and many other fabulous jobs, and mentor and friend of Kudlow. Larry Lindsey, glad to see you, my friend. So let's start at the top. Will the Fed be cutting interest rates at their FOMC meeting in September? What you think?
I think they could go either way. There are good arguments on both sides, and I will leave it up to them.
That doesn't sound like
Sorry,
you.
Larry.
That's terrible. I can't. You got to take a position here. I'm going to read. I'm going to break protocol. Fed staff revises down inflationary impact of tariffs. Okay, that's your one of your recent newsletters. So if they're not worried about inflationary tariffs, which they shouldn't be, what would stop them from cutting rates?
Well, I think there may have memories of what happened last September when they cut 50 bips right before the election, and the long bond went up 80 bips. No, that's a vote of no confidence if I ever saw one. So I don't think they want to chance a rerun of that. And it's actually unclear, probably, to them how the bond market will respond to a rate cut.
What do you think about the state of the economy? There's a lot of folks, and some in the administration, by the way, who are concerned that labor markets are on stall speed, housing is still pretty much in a recession, that the one big beautiful bill, which has a lot of good tax incentives, nonetheless doesn't really kick in for a while. So you've got a potentially weak economy, Larry Lindsey. Would that tip the Fed to a lower rate cut?
It very well could. I think the one thing that was left out, both of the minutes that came out yesterday and the general discussion, is how fast the deficit has been coming down. It was $700 billion in the fourth quarter. It was $600 in the first quarter. It was just $30 billion in the second quarter. Even if you throw July into the second quarter, you have a number that's still around under 400. So you've had a 1% of GDP cut in the fiscal stimulus in just 2 quarters. That's quick, no matter how you look at it. Now, the odds are you're not going to continue to see cuts like that. That's what you got to figure out. But the fact that they're ignoring how fast the fiscal situation is tightening, I think, is very unfortunate.
Now, a lot of people watching this show would be glad to hear that the budget deficit's coming down. But you're saying it has a, at least short-run, negative impact on the economy. Is that right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm happy the budget deficit's coming down too. But, numbers are a fact, right? And the trend is a good trend, though we still have the deficit too high. But remember, what would have happened if the Congress hadn't passed the one big beautiful bill? We would have had a massive fiscal contraction on January 1. It would have thrown us into a recession. Now, fortunately, we have all these other good things going on at the same time under the current law, and we will not have a recession. I'm pretty confident of that. But it is the cause, in my opinion, of the slowdown that we've seen.
So you're saying we would have had a massive contraction because of the $4 trillion tax hike?
Correct.
And so we've dodged that bullet. I mean, what about the tariff revenues that are coming in? I'm assuming they will continue. I don't, the effective rate could be 12, 15%. I'm not sure. I don't think anybody knows that yet. But it's making a lot of money, Larry Lindsey, and that's going to curb the budget deficit. Is that good or bad in your world?
I think it's a good thing, and I think it's one of the causes of a big contraction in the deficit that we saw, particularly in the second quarter.
Do you think? No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say. So, we're accused of being two-handed economists, and yes, we're very glad for the revenue. The government needs it, but we have to keep in mind that that is still a fiscal contraction. Fortunately, foreigners are paying at least some of that fiscal contraction. But, it's still a negative in the short run for the economy.
So, but look at, when you get all these incentives kick in, you've got depreciation, factory building, You've got no taxes on tips. You've got no taxes on overtime. You've got a higher kitty credit. I mean, there's a lot. I'm saying next year is a blue-collar boom. Next year is a blue-collar boom, and it could be a disinflationary boom, Larry Lindsey. Last 20 seconds. How about that?
It could be, and it will be, and that's one of the president's objectives. I mean, it goes along both with the tariff policy, changes in labor market policy, and changes in immigration. Yeah, this administration is definitely committed to having a blue-collar boom, and I think you're right, Larry. I think we'll see one next year.
Larry Lindsey, good to see you. Thanks for coming on. We appreciate it very much. I'll be right back with my last word.